Right, guys, what is up? Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Breakfast with the Brand, the number one podcast in the world for entrepreneurs and leaders who want to go to the next level with their brands. I am your host, Junior Frederick, and I have with me, as usual, Mr. Bobby Stealth. And we're about to get into a phenomenal conversation for you today. If you are tuned in live, you already know what to do. Put your flames in the comments and let us know where you're listening in from. A quick shout out goes to Dr. Michelle. So Dr. Michelle says, thrilling theatrical Tuesday. Dr. Michelle and those tongue twisters, boy, I tell you. Um, Tia, shout out to Tia. She says, great Thursday, everyone. Have a blessed week ahead from New Jersey. Bobby, what say you, man? How you doing?
I feel interesting this morning, Junior. Very, very interesting because I feel like I can go harder. You can go harder because I was watching some David Goggins this morning, and maybe it just be the energy. Maybe it's just the energy from the video. But I was like looking over at my office, looking at my life, looking at different things. I'm like, what does the next level look like? Like I'm hitting it pretty good, but what does the next notch look like? So I'm looking to take a plunge. I'm looking to take a plunge into the deep end of execution and personal and professional development. And sometimes you just got to shock your body. You got to shock yourself, shock your environment. But that's how I'm feeling. I'm feeling like, all right, it's time. I'm due for a shocking season. So I'm looking forward to it.
Very nice. A shocking season is pretty interesting. I mean, David Goggins will definitely push you if you listen to him in the morning. If you listen to David Goggins in the morning,
Yeah.
you wake up definitely differently. Um, I try to remain in that state, Bobby, always. Like I try to remain in that state always and just, never take anything for granted and just it's a very thin line between being satisfied and not being satisfied at all.
Mhm.
You can be grateful but not satisfied. If that makes sense. And that's sort of how I live. Like I sort of stay in that state, so I'm grateful, but I'm not satisfied. I'm not done. There's more to do,
Mhm.
and that's how I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's an interesting way to put it because as entrepreneurs, we're always growing, we're always scaling our businesses and mentoring people, getting mentorship ourselves. So I think perspective is very important when it comes to what next looks like. And when you say, I want to stay there, like in that space and in that frame, um, that's something that I think I do as well, or at least that's the idea that I like to have. It's like, okay, how long can I sustain this? And then what does breakthrough look like? And then how long do I need to recover so that I can get to that space again? So I'm interested to see how we tie this into branding because we opened up interestingly. We opened up with this level up mentality, with this, okay, I'm at one stage and I'm going to the next stage. I'm at one stage and I'm going to the next stage. And I've noticed that our brands and our businesses develop stage after stage as we get more intense, more consistent, more aware. And I think we're going to go somewhere with that today, this week.
I think we definitely are. Guys, we're gonna take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be diving into branding. You don't want to miss it. Stay tuned.
There's slow growth and then there's scale. There's incremental growth and then there's exponential growth. What I want to talk to you about is adding a zero to you and experiencing exponential scale. Incremental growth says 1 plus 1 is 2. Exponential growth says 1 plus 0 is 10. Incremental growth says 2 plus 2 is 4. Exponential growth says 5 plus 0 is 50. Guys, listen, when you add a 0 to you, you can add a 0 to the marketplace. You can add a 0 to the value that you bring. So you can add a 0 to your family, add a 0 to your legacy. This is what we're talking about. We're not talking about incremental, we're talking about exponential. I always say that business is a spiritual game. Just imagine when you combine your skills, your values, your abilities, your talents to something bigger than you, something greater than you, something like the power of exponential. That is adding a zero. Add a zero to your competence, add a zero to your confidence. This is about adding a zero in your life, your value, your industry, and your mission. Let's grow. So when you're young, mommy tells you to play nice. Play nice, Timmy. Let all of the other kids play too. But in business, it's not about playing nice. In business, it's about winning. It's about adding multiple zeros to your revenue. Now, of course, your staff wins. And when you win, other people win. However, when it comes to competition, you absolutely must dominate. You can't play for participation, and you can't play just to get along or just to get by, because business is serious. Business will help you to change the world, or the world will change you. Your people will either win or your people will lose based on your level of leadership, what you're willing to do, what you're willing to sacrifice, and how much you know about dominating.
All right, guys, so welcome back. This is Breakfast with the Brand. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about branding, but more specifically, I think we'll be talking about the evolution of your brand, like the evolution of the brand. So, Bobby, I'll sort of let you, pick it up from here.
Yeah.
But I know you said a lot of people have been asking you, a couple questions about the evolution of their brand. So, let's get into that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I get a lot of calls, guys. And as I'm getting people calling in, some people have big problems, some people have small problems, but everybody has a problem, right? So like everybody's got something that they're trying to fix. And one common thing that I've seen a lot is rebranding or evolving the brand. And it sounds something like this. I used to do hair, now I do credit repair, and now I'm thinking about doing both of these at the same time, and I'm trying to put a spin on it, and I don't know how to rebrand so that I can get all of this stuff done. And it's like they're lost. And on one side, they're asking me about brand clarity. How do they get clarity on their brand? And then on the other side, they're asking me for singularity of messaging, or how do they message effectively, a single message to an ideal client when they're in two different places at the same time. So they're trying to evolve their brand, but they're like the caterpillar in the cocoon. It's like they're not one or the other. They're in the state of evolution. They're not a caterpillar, nor are they a butterfly, but they're trying to become. And they're asking me, what do I do now? What do I wait? Do I post content for both? Do I create another website and have two? Do I have two social media platforms saying two different things? So that's the direction that I want to go in, Junior, this morning, and just talk about our evolutions as a brand, what we saw, some of the hurdles we overcame, some of the common challenges that you'll see, and then what investments to make and when to make those investments and why certain things are important. So I'll open it up and say, when I first came in to brand it like a leader, my voice was 2 octaves higher. I speak much differently now. My attire was much different, and the amount of money that I was able to charge in the marketplace was very different. So I had to evolve. My website had to evolve. My octave and pitch had to evolve. My attire had to evolve, as well as my messaging. And one of the first things that I had to do to begin this evolution was get clarity on who I was and who I wanted to serve. So that's something that I highly recommend you do as you're evolving, is do a self-check and say, who am I and who do I want to serve? What's been your experience, Junior, with evolving as a brand?
So I'll talk about that, but I'll also address the concern that you brought up from the other person. So my experience has been a journey of clarity. It's been a journey of adding things onto myself, but also removing things that don't serve me. So there are a lot of different things, particularly mindset, like beliefs, stuff that I believed about myself that were not true. Like literally, they were just not true. And it's so interesting that many of the things we believe or the places where we get our beliefs from are most oftentimes from people and from places that don't have our best interests at heart. So if you're building your brand right now, I want you to ask yourself, like, what do you actually believe about yourself? What is the limiting belief? It's said that in order to grow in business, or when entrepreneurs don't grow in business, Bobby, they normally have one of two constraints. The constraint is that is normally a belief constraint. So it's normally you're lacking a skill or you're lacking a belief. Because if you had all the skills that you need to be successful, and if you had the belief and the mindset to be successful, then you would be successful. Even if you believe in yourself but you don't have the skills, then you're not going to be successful until you get those skills. And even if you have the skills but you don't believe in yourself, just like the proverbial elephant, you know that thing where they tie the elephant on the rope to like this little thing in the center, and they remove the rope and the elephant doesn't know the rope is gone. You stay stuck with those limiting beliefs. So for me, it's been a journey of growing skills and getting rid of limiting beliefs.
Hmm.
That's what my evolution has been like.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at the example you brought up, that sounds to me like a person that is branding what they do and is not branding themselves.
Yeah.
If you brand what you do and then you don't brand you, when you do something different, it starts to confuse people. Like we can do different things. Like I want you to imagine a celebrity, famous celebrity that you know, doesn't matter who it is, somebody who has millions of followers, somebody who's known, let's say, for TV, or maybe they're known for cooking, whatever it is. If tomorrow or if today they decided to launch something different, like they decided to go in a different direction, but the direction they were going in sort of align with their brand and it makes sense. Like let's say Gordon Ramsay, for example. Let's say Gordon Ramsay had Hell's Kitchen, right? If tomorrow Gordon Ramsay wanted to launch a set of cookware, like nobody gets confused. Okay. If he went to do something like oil, then that's a little bit like far off. But he can do different things and not have to switch lanes because he's branding himself and not what he does. And I believe that in order for that person to find a solution, they need to learn how to brand themselves and not what they do. And if you could, and like I was telling somebody just a couple of days ago,
Hmm.
we often focus on the fruit as entrepreneurs. So when I say the fruit, what I mean is what your brand does. So the fruit is coaching, the fruit is consulting, the fruit is speaking, the fruit is a course, the fruit is a mentorship, a program, a trip, a retreat. But what we need to focus on is the root. If you focus on the root, which is who you are, then you can produce any fruit. If you focus on the fruit, when you switch from fruit to fruit, people get confused. I
Yeah.
thought you were a coach. Why are you consulting? I thought you were a consultant. Why are you speaking? I thought you were this. Why are you doing that?
Hmm.
Whereas if you focus on the root, like what makes you you, then you could literally do any fruit. You could be a coach that produces a mug tomorrow. You come out with a mug. You come out with a clothing line. You come out with a set of hoodies. You're a coach. Look at Coach Prime.
Hmm.
Perfect. Listen, I went up north the other day, Bobby. I went to a store up north in the north side of the island the other day. Okay, and I was walking through the aisle and I saw some durags
Yeah.
and they had Coach Prime on them. I said, "What? This guy has a brand all the way in St. Lucia. I kid you not. It was him on the durag, and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Like, so he's the perfect example. So he went into football. He's a football coach, like, but then he's able to transcend and to traverse and to go into multiple different areas like cosmetics, um, football, all kinds of stuff, endorsements, cereal, like all kinds of stuff. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Branding you and not necessarily branding the task or the fruit, but focusing on the root.
Junior, you said something there that I want to highlight. You said transcend and traverse. That's powerful because when when you brand you and not what you do, you can very well transcend what you do or what you've done. And I think that's another hang up that people are experiencing is they're like, I've been this person for all these years, or I've done this thing for all these years. And now how do I transcend it? Because they are so used to being in it, or they created this box around themselves. And now they're like, how do I traverse this? And I think the best thing we can do is develop ourselves as leaders. And that this is an interesting perspective, but it's one I get from my military experience. So in the military, when you go to another level, you get more, like you get another rank, you get more latitude, more, we call it left and right lateral limits. So when I'm a young Marine, my limits are like this. And when I'm a more seasoned Marine, my limits are like this. And then when I'm an experienced Marine, say my limits are like this. Now, what this says is that the more experienced I become as a Marine, so not what you do, but who you are. I am a Marine, but I may do data analytics, machine gunnery, or communications, but I am a Marine. So one of the concepts that we use in Marines are leaders, much like you all that are on this call right now, is that with leadership development comes the ability to transcend and traverse. And that's just a military example. So I think one thing that's unique about what we've done here with the Branded Like a Leader program, the Coaching Like a Leader program, and all those leader programs is that we built in the transcendence and the traversion, or the traversing rather, because as you develop as a leader, you have no choice but to transcend your old leadership. And if you are the brand and you are that which is being developed, the brand transcends by function instead of this act of, okay, I'm no longer this, but I'm this now. But it's a matter of the function. And I think that's really important. So one of the things that I remember personally about my brand's development was believing that I was worth it. Now, this may be just me, but some other people may be the same way. It's like I had to value myself more. And most brands sometimes come into the marketplace without a proven product. That's why we call ourselves entrepreneurs, because we are in the world of uncertainty. We see that there's a problem, but we do not have a proven product. And because we don't have a proven product, we have every logical reason to be doubtful. You're actually wise if you're doubtful. Granted, you want to be doubtful in the sense that, okay, this is a very low likelihood that this will work, but you also have to be confident in your capabilities. So it's like, okay, I understand the risk and the odds, but I'm also confident in my ability to execute and give it a good go. So I say that to say one of my biggest challenges as my brand developed was achieving proof of concept, meaning my product is working and it's working more and more, and then being able to say, this is what I'm worth. Because that was hard for me. It was like, am I really worth 5 figures? Multiple 5 figures? The work I'm doing is only taking me 2 hours. Am I really going to charge them 5 grand for that? And the reality is I did have a team, like I'm in accounting. So I had people on staff and payroll. So it may only cost me, an hour or two, but I did pay other people to do stuff. But it was a really interesting mindset shift for me, was to say the military would only pay me $16 an hour. And now I'm charging this guy $1,500, and they're like happy to pay it. So that was interesting for me. So I'll turn it back over to Junior as we're just kind of giving our perspectives on our brand's development. But that was a challenge that I had to overcome.
Nice, nice. And thank you for sharing that, Bobby, because I think most of us face that challenge.
Mhm.
I think I shared some time ago, like the first time when I just started closing, the first time I saw high ticket, I just had to hold my breath when I said the price
Mhm.
because it was like my first time. And when you do something for the first time, it can be a little bit, you know, scary. There's a little bit of uncertainty. And I like the way you spoke about having latitude because it's literally the same way. And in business, you get more latitude as you get more experience because, the experience allows you to be a better strategic thinker. So you might tell somebody to do something, and to them it may not make sense, but you've already thought like 5 moves ahead, and they may not understand why. And sometimes you don't have time to explain why. That's the thing too. But yeah, I would
Yeah.
say the evolution of a brand comes from experience. But if somebody's experiencing or going through what you spoke about, they definitely need to do a little backtrack and check on themselves and find out, like, am I branding me? And it's so amazing because just last night we had a very like nice session. Like, guys, we had an amazing session inside the Branded Like a Leader Academy. If you were there, I see 2 people that were there. Go ahead, put something in the comments. Let people know what it was like for you. But it's funny because we literally spoke about the same thing, and I spoke about how there's a surface level of what you do, and then there's a deeper level, like the real level of what you do. So the fruit, Bobby, is like the surface level. It's like, I'm a coach, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a doctor, I'm a physician, I'm a counselor. And then there's the deeper level, which is, what do you actually do?
Hmm.
Like, why are you here? Like, and that to me is what, it's like an invisible force, like gravity, that sort of brings the brand together and makes it make sense. It makes it more than transactional, it makes it relational, and it helps you to establish a relationship with the audience because you're coming from a different place that is not just a surface level of what you do, it's a deeper level of what you stand for, what you represent. And to me, that allows a brand to, like you said, have the latitude to transcend anything.
Hmm.
Like, going into radio, going into movies. We've seen brands go from, like, The Rock, go from wrestling to movies to tequila to all kinds of stuff, but nobody gets confused. Once you capture that essence, like, you can effectively transcend any industry, literally, because you're bringing you. And it's amazing because there's a saying, Bobby, that goes that, remember, you take you wherever you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, guys, you take you wherever you go. You take you wherever you go. So remember to brand you, because if you brand you, then you can literally take you wherever you want to go. Right. So
Right.
I'm gonna read a couple of these, Bobby, before we go to a break. So Tia was on the session in the academy last night. She says it was an enlightening experience and process to go through. Still working on mine. Thank you. Um, Joel says learning to play chess on a 3D board. There you go. Latitude allows for expansion of your mind, brand, and deliverables. There you go. There you go. Shout out to Shade. All right, so Bobby, we're gonna go to a quick break, but before we do, is there anything you wanna touch on before we do that?
No, not before we do it. Once we get back, I definitely got a interesting perspective. Interesting perspective about why building a brand can feel so overwhelming. Because I've got some experiences that a lot of people may be experiencing right now, and I'll share those with the people to just create some more clarity. So I'm excited for when we come back, but that's what you can expect to hear when we come back, guys. Like, if you're like, man, this is overwhelming or this is taxing, like, why so much? I'm going to share with you what you're probably likely experiencing and how I navigated it. And Junior, I'm sure, is going to touch on what he's done to navigate it as well.
When I think of brand you, I think of being your best self, your most authentic. The reason why we were able to crush business, absolutely dominate in business without having the marketing list, without having the email huge list, without having the Facebook ads and the advertising budget, without knowing the algorithm. The reason we were able to do this is because I branded myself. I told my authentic story and I was comfortable in my skin. Why? Because it was that time in the world where everything was shifting. It was 2020, March. So you remember what happened during that time. It was like the world was coming to an end. So you didn't have anything to hold back. So I chose to give everything that I had and be everything that I am. And because I was that, because I branded me, because I was authentic, everything shifted. And people wanted more. And they wanted to know more about me and how they could become more comfortable in their skin. Listen, guys, when you brand you and not what you do, you're gonna add a 0 to the world, but you'll also add a 0 to your revenue. Let's grow. Confidence is key. Most of the people I work with, they have the education, the experience, and the expertise. We call those the 3 E's. But they're looking for the 3 I's, the income, the impact, and the independence. And I always tell them that the bridge between the 3 E's and the 3 I's is marrying your confidence to your competence. Most of the people I work with, again, have all of the competence in the world. What I help them do is get the confidence.
All right, guys, so we are back and we are diving into the topic of branding you and not what you do. Bobby, before we went to the break, I think you had something for us.
Yes. So the 3 pillars of business. If you guys are taking notes, which many of you are, I want you to write this down. 3 pillars of business. First pillar is sales and marketing. The second pillar is operations. And the third pillar is finance, accounting, and tax. Okay. Now, as an entrepreneur, business owner, entrepreneur meaning the phase in which you have an idea that you believe you can take to market. Business owner is when you've taken the idea to market successfully over time and you have a business system supporting your operation. So as an entrepreneur or a business owner, there's a lot to learn and there's a lot to do. And most of us have to build the brand while doing all the things it takes to build the business. And that can be overwhelming. And one of the things that I experienced that was eye-opening for me is every entrepreneur is a salesperson. Now, that's my belief. Some may rebuttal, but I will debate you on it, right? But in my experience, if you cannot sell as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, if you cannot generate cash, then the business won't last. So a connection to my military experience would be this. In the Marine Corps, we say every Marine is a rifleman. Like that is through and through. If you go on any military website, you'll find it about the Marines. Every Marine's a rifleman. So what do we have to do in boot camp? We have to learn all the core components of being a rifleman, of going to combat, of surviving in a combat environment on the ground and supporting our Navy and Marine or Navy and Army counterparts. So what does that look like in business? That looks like you learning how to write copy, but not being an expert in copywriting. That looks like you being on the phones, but not necessarily being the best sales professional. That looks like you being the builder of your app, or at least trying to figure out how to teach yourself to code while you're also trying to figure out how to network, while you're also trying to figure out how to sell, while you're also trying to figure out how to brand. And brand is like, do I even need this? And then you have to have it. But it's one of the things that has so little economic value to the company in its early stages, but it also has all the economic value to the company in the early stages. And I'll explain that because you really do have a catch-22 dilemma here. So to build a good, sustainable brand, it's going to take capital and it's going to take time. It's going to take energy, right? And all of these things are things that slow you down, so to speak. So if you're spending money on something, you can't spend that money somewhere else. If you're spending time doing something, you can't spend that same time doing something else. If you're spending energy, like it's concentrated. And that's why branding is such a powerful separator in the marketplace, because it takes so much to develop it. But if you develop it, it then becomes a barrier to entry to your competitors or to other people trying to come into the industry. So why do I share this? To kind of bring some light to it, is because branding your business properly is probably one of the toughest things you're going to do, but it's one of the best things you can do for your business. It's one of the toughest things you're going to do because you got to learn all this other stuff at the same time just to have a business. It's one of the best things you will do because once you do this right, once you get the brand right, the money flows. And it flows somewhat effortlessly because you have an ideal client, you have nice high prices, and you have a brand that is an extension of your morals, values, and principles. So you're authentically positioned in the marketplace. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling like, man, am I doing this right? Man, how, does it really take this long? Man, I really want to do something different. Like, stick it out, stay with it because it feels that overwhelming because you're processing the 3 pillars of business. You're learning them all on the fly and you're building a brand that seems to be ever shifting. So you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right work, and it is interesting. So stick with it. That was another one of my experiences.
Yes, sir. I think there was a question in there where you said you sort of alluded to the fact, or you sort of asked the question like, how do you or how does one manage like all of those things? So I think there's two routes to this, and neither one is right and the other one is wrong. It's just about like your preference. You have different kinds of thinkers. So you have different kinds of leaders. So you have people that love doing multiple things at once, and then you have people that like doing one thing at a time.
Mhm.
Neither way is right or wrong. You could have someone that has 5 pieces. So in other words, like I'm trying to learn sales, I'm trying to learn marketing, I'm trying to learn this, I'm trying to learn that. I'm trying to do like 5 different things at the same time. And I'm moving the pieces on all five. So let's say you're moving like one piece on each one every single day. And
Mhm.
you're happy with that because to you that feels like progress. And then you have some people that say, okay, I need to learn these 5 things. I'm going to start on number one. I'm going to move number one 5 spaces down the board every single day until I get to the end result. Then I'm going to move number two 5 spaces. So each of them, I'm both moving 5 spaces. It's just that number one is moving in 5 different dimensions or 5 different um, areas,
Yeah.
and the second person is moving in one area. So I would say you have to know what works for you, and you have to know the kind of thinker you are. A high D is going to want to move all 5 of those things at the same time. Chances are they're not going to be great at it, and they're going to need to like ask other people to do it for. So you might have an EA, and you might say, well, we need to do this, we need to get that done, we need to get this done, we need to get that done. So they're good at delegating stuff, but they may not necessarily have the skills, the systematic skills to actually do it themselves.
Mhm.
And maybe that's the route you need to go. Then you could have somebody who's a high C who happens to be phenomenal at most of these things. And they're like, okay, I can do this stuff myself, but I'm gonna move each one at a time. And I'm gonna see it through to completion, completion, completion. Sometimes they both take the same amount of time. They get to the same destination, they just get there differently. So I would say it's about finding out what works for you, the kind of thinker you are, how you process stuff, and what works for you. And that's it. So you either way you still have to get everything done.
Right.
So I would say prioritize your business's survival. That's it. So in other words, if I move all 5 pieces at the same time, is the business going to survive? As opposed to if I move one piece at a time, can the business still survive? Is moving one piece at a time more efficient and more effective right now than moving 5 pieces at the same time? Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah. It does.
Would it be worth it? Would it be worth it to have this one thing like fully done to completion, like completely like and done and systematic and it's down and it's fully complete, and then moving on to the next thing? Or is it better to move all 5 things and maybe risk not having all 5 of them complete, but just knowing that you're a little further down the road? So it's all about preference, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that I'll say to that, Junior, is I remember the process for me when I went through Branded Like a Leader. That's kind of how it was taught. I went from Branded Like a Leader to coaching like a leader to consulting like a leader to closing like a leader, and then speaking like a leader. And those were all different competencies. And I remember taking them in that order, if I remember correctly. It was a few years ago, but I I was kind of in a pipeline. I was in an ascension model. And in this ascension model, I pretty much learned one competency at a time. And the thing about knowing only one competency before you learn the next one means you only have one you can work with. But once you learn the next one, you've most likely had sufficient time to master or at least get to a degree of proficiency with the first one that you're now stacking competencies. And I believe Shaan calls this competency stacking. And that's another way that kind of, I think, combines them a little bit. So it really does lean to what Junior was saying, is moving one at a time. But I was moving one at a time every 8 weeks. So every 8 weeks, it was like proficiency, compound, proficiency, compound. So in 1 year's time, I had learned like 4 to 6 core competencies on top of having a background in entrepreneurship with a concentration in finance and economics. So I also had a bit of an advantage in that way. But I will say this: everybody has strengths, and focus on your strengths. You know, it doesn't make a lot of sense in my experience to try to do everything in your business, especially those things that you're not uniquely gifted to do or equipped to do. Like, learn the core competency of it, like be able to do it, but don't spend too much time there would be my recommendation. And I am somewhat of a high D. I'm like Junior, I believe me and you are the same in the high D, high C, but I'm not a like 99 C. I'm more of a higher D and high C, but I'm not a 99. And pretty much what that means is like, I'll calculate things, but I'll move just as fast. Like I really don't have to have it so systematic, organized, and calculated. So what am I saying to you? One of the things that helps is knowing what's going to keep the business alive, like Junior said. And I just want to give you guys an insight to 2 or 3 of the challenges that almost sunk my business and how we survived them and what I prioritized very quickly. I've got some coming to mind right out of the gate. So some of you all are building your business with your personal finances, your personal money. So you're bootstrapping. If you're bootstrapping or using your own funds, then prioritizing the business also means prioritizing your livelihood. So that means prioritizing finance, tax, and accounting. Because when you're building the business and you're also living off of the proceeds of the business, then your income is very skewed. So your taxes are very skewed. So how you show up to the IRS and how you end up going through life is very, very interesting. That tax year. So I would highly recommend, if you're bootstrapping, to pay some attention to your financing, because you're probably going to be borrowing money. You're going to be paying money back with interest, and you're going to have to file for taxes. So that was one thing that almost took us out, because I was making money, but I was spending more money than I was making. So I didn't have an income, meaning like I had income, but it wasn't positive income because I was investing all my money. So that meant that I couldn't borrow any more money when I needed to scale because I didn't have any income. So one thing to think about while you're building your brand. Another thing that almost took me out, this is the other one that I will share on the operations side of the house, was a team. At one point in time, I had like 10 people on my team. I'm paying, everybody. And I couldn't delegate a fraction of the stuff that I needed done. And on top of delegating it, I couldn't supervise it. So another thing when you're building your brand, and like right now we're peeling back the curtain. This is the stuff people don't talk about, like taxes. Yeah, they're real. Financing. Yes, you cannot borrow money if you don't have an income. Like, these are real things. And now on the operation side of the house, you can have all this help. Everybody's like, I need help. But if you can't delegate to that help and you can't leverage the help becomes a disadvantage, because now you're spending money, getting no return on investment, and stressing yourself out trying to delegate just to be ineffective. So what I learned there was I needed to cut expenses to maintain operational cash flow. And I also needed to learn more so that I could delegate more effectively or do more things self-sufficiently within the organization, or be the trainer of someone that's less expensive, because everybody's trying to pay the expert, but sometimes you need to pay the willing to work and help them develop themselves into experts, because you just can't afford to pay the expert. So those are just some different things that I had to experience while developing my brand, building my brand, and transitioning as an entrepreneur to becoming a business owner that was able to establish the 400% revenue growth and hit the 6 figures and do all those different things.
That's pretty good, Bobby. So I like the fact that you brought about like that sort of perspective, and you are right. So I think you're a DC. I'm more of a CD. So I strategize and then I execute. So it's good to hear from like not the opposite, but like a different perspective, like execution and then think. So both is right. Like none is better than the other. But I would say that you have to find what works for you. So work in your strength, like Bobby says, work with your personality type. Like whatever your personality type is, find out what works for you and then work in your strength. It doesn't make sense trying to do something that you're not best fitted for. Like for me, I don't like doing design stuff. So I don't even bother. I don't send me no design, don't ask me to do no flyer. Like just don't just don't do that, because I can't I just don't want to think about that stuff. Right? So there are certain things that you just don't like to do, that you cannot do. You might want to give that to somebody else. And the things that you're phenomenal at, find a way to make it work. Like learn your process, learn the way that your brain works, the way that you think, the personality type that you have, and then you just execute on that. And people often say, well, is this one better than that one? I say no. It's interesting because the other day I did a quick Google search, and I Google the personality type of a couple billionaires. So I Googled Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and I Googled, I think, Bill Gates. So I Googled their personality types, and all of them are different. All of them are different. So what does that mean? That means that, hey, you can all be successful. It doesn't matter what your personality type is. You can be successful. You can be massively, massively successful. Okay, so just work where you are with what you have and with who you have, which is you. All right, guys. So we're going to take one more break. When we come back, we're going to be diving more into branding. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I said Shaan Ride East. I'm proud. I said Shaan Ride East. Leadership is not the brand they made for us.
Listen, he brought fire, heat. He didn't hold back.
20 years down the line, what I could sell, why not serve first? Service over salary. Branding like a leader closes the gap for people who want branding. Speaking like a leader closes the gap for people who are nervous about speaking. If Steve Jobs would have speculated, we wouldn't have Apple.
He changed lives. He helped people open up their business and start their business.
We are the brand. Some people say, Shaan, should I quit my job? Mentally, yes.
As a speaker too, to be able to learn from him and watch him and you know, game respects game. And I want to have that much game someday.
The right client, pay $500,000 for what you do. You have to be bold in your beliefs.
He has been an amazing asset to this event and a pleasure to work with. Very captivating, collaborative, worked very well with the audience.
I want to help you. Put a 0 behind your number, right?
The session was great. How he is online, virtually, he is even more phenomenal in person.
Be the face of change that you want to see. Stop asking questions and start giving demands.
The entire team has just been absolutely incredible. They are a joy to work with. They go above and beyond.
Give yourself a round of applause. Yes, yes, yes.
Right, guys, so we are back. This has definitely been an interesting conversation, diving into the branding, diving into the personality types, diving into, some of what makes it work, the mindset. Like I'll tell people, like, you have to figure out the way you work. So figure out the way you work and just work based on that. That's what I did. That's what Bobby has done. That's what Sean did. Sean calls it your exponential zone. So operating in your zone of genius, your exponential zone, you have to find what that is for you, and then just work based on that. But one thing's for sure is everybody here can be successful. That's for sure. That's for sure. Especially if you're on this call.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, my brand actually surprised me, Junior. Like, I didn't know who I was until, and I won't say it like that. Like, that comes off a bit aggressive. Like, I knew who I was, but I didn't know who I was. So, what I mean by that is business will reveal to you who you are because it's such a stressful environment. And I think this is good for brands because when you put yourself, what I think it was Martin Luther King who said, adversity introduces a person to themselves. And when you're building your business, you're going to be faced with all types of different adversities. And one thing that I had to learn was that let them come, let the adversities come. And as they come, build a brand that can deal with them. And that's when I was dealing with my mindset. So in Branded Like a Leader, there's mind, body, spirit. There's a whole week that we cover that. And one part of building my brand, I had to say, okay, what type of brand mentality do I have to have in order for my brand to survive in the onslaught of activities that were happening? Because I built my business during COVID. So when I built my business, it was like you couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't stand within 6 feet of people. You couldn't talk like clearly, like you had a mask on your face. So you couldn't really talk that effectively. So you had all of these different things going on and you're trying to build a business and you're just thinking to yourself, is this really going to work? Like, could this work? Like, how will this work? And brand mentality, I think, is something that helped me out quite a bit because that's when I learned who I was. And who I was an extension of who I had been in the military, which was a go-getter, a self-starter, a resilient and aggressive executor that always kept the faith. And like that was me in business. Like I was resilient, faithful, and optimistic while working like there was no tomorrow. And that became my brand. So three of my like core values when you come into my organization, or let's say we were to hire someone on, they learn about excellence, service, and faith. Like those are our three core components to our business model. And excellence is to do everything that you can. Like we have definitions for this. So our definition of excellence is to do your very best, given your current abilities, and ever seeking self-improvement and higher degrees of mastery. That's excellence for us. And then service is to give more in use value than we take in cash value. And then faith is the substance. So we took the Bible version of this one, but faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So always hope, always keep your focus on those things that you believe are possible, even in the face of evidence that says it's impossible. And those three things kind of shape our organization. So if you keep the faith and you serve, you'll get what you deserve and maintain a spirit of excellence in everything that you do, and you'll be a great asset to our team here. So that's something that I had to develop over the years.
Bobby, I heard you say something, man, and it's from one of my favorite books,
Yeah.
which is actually The Science of Getting Rich. So, guys, The Science of Getting Rich. So, Bobby said, give more in use value than you take in cash value. Somebody asked me the question the other day. I think it might have been you, maybe 2 days ago, where you asked me about service. And I said service is a strategy. Like, service can be a strategy where you give people literally 10 times the value of whatever they pay you. So if somebody pays you $1,000, make sure to give them $10,000 worth of value, meaning worth of use value. Like what can they actually do with what you give them? And you'll have a customer for life. Like, so I love the fact that you said that. I could definitely say that that is a value of mine as well. And the people who know me, they'll tell you that about me. Definitely always there to help out, always there to serve, see what I can do. Some of the values, it's interesting, Bobby, because when I think about values, I'll say that I've always sort of had the same brand values all throughout my life. It's
Mm.
just that I never consciously thought about them. I never consciously, you know, seek to bring them out. And in hindsight, looking back several years, I could say that I've always been the same person, just different versions of the same person. I've always had the same spirit, just different body and different mind, right? Mindset. But I've always had the same spirit. And I think once you figure that out, like what do you actually value? And that's why inside branded like a leader, one of the prerequisites to the course is something called your origin brand story. Your origin brand story goes all the way back to when you were like 1 year old and figuring out what was important to you back then. Like, how did you come into being the person you are today? What were some of the values that you either you picked up on the journey or that you came up with along the journey? And how have those values, transition with you as you move through different periods and different places in your life and different evolutions of the brand,
Hmm.
right? So I'll give you a quick story. So quick evolution for me. I know we're sort of at the top of the hour. So when I was we call it grade two where I'm from. I don't know what they call it where you're from, but let's say like 6, 7 years old. I was in a class one day and I sat at the back of the class. Okay. So I didn't sit at the front of the class. I was sitting at the back of the class and the teacher was teaching and I was reading a book. I don't remember what book it is, but I used to love those mystery books back in the day. There was something called, I think everybody knows Enid Blyton. I think Enid Blyton had some amazing mystery books back in the day. There was something called the Rillaby. I think they call it the Rillaby Fair Mystery. With
Mm.
four, it was basically like four kids, and they were exploring like deserted islands,
Yeah.
caves, stuff like that. It was very interesting. So I used to love mystery books back in the day. In fact, Bobby, as a little boy, when my mom took me to town, she could not leave town without buying me a book. Like literally, every time we went to town, she had to buy me a book before we left. Like I demanded a book. Like you had to buy me a book before we left. So I was reading. Teacher came to the back of the class. She said, "Mr. Frederick, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm reading." She said, um, in short, she said like you have to make a choice, either the class or the book. So I looked at her. I looked at my book. I said, "Okay." I picked up my bag. I picked up my book and I walked out the class. I went outside. I sat down. I read my book. And I came back at the end of the year. I came top of my class. So why do I tell that story? The story is because having the value of, and by the way, I'm not, if there are kids looking, like, listen to your teachers, okay? But I'm just saying, like, the value here is, um I guess, sort of standing up for what you believe in
Hmm.
and having that sort of supreme confidence in your abilities. Like, I know I didn't need to listen to top the class because I'd already done the work. Like, she was talking, I'd already done the work. So having that sort of supreme confidence in who you are, what you can do, and just being decisive, being able to make choices and make the choices you make right, have definitely been values that are stuck for me throughout my brand's evolution. And I suspect they will continue to stay as my brand continues to evolve.
Yeah.
So with that being said, guys, we're gonna take it off today, right now. So thank you so much, Bobby. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we jump off?
No, Junior, we'll see you guys tomorrow, same time. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, tomorrow's Friday, guys. So you definitely want to tap in. Don't miss it. Same place, same time, 8 a.m. Come with your questions. And I'll only ask, like, this is free. The only thing we ask is if you find value from the show, please share it with one other person, just one person. I'm not asking you to share it with like 10 people, just literally one person. All right. So have a phenomenal day and speak soon. Let's grow.
grow.